Well into the holidays in Northeast Florida now. What are your plans for winter on the water? A tourism expert updates us on plans in the River City. Coach Coughlin made a difference on the field for the Jaguars. His organization continues making a difference in lives locally. Kelly Coughlin shares some examples, including this young man, a cancer survivor heading for medical school. First, following continued terror concerns and domestic tragedies, a local state representative addresses plans to try and keep Florida secure. How he wants to do that. All of those topics coming up on This Week in Jacksonville. We start this morning with condolences to the families involved in the mass shooting in Southern California this week. Investigators in California have said that they were working their way through the family history and the background of that married couple that turned into mass shooters when they opened fire at a work conference event Wednesday. Another main focus of that investigation was to determine whether that deadly attack, which left 14 dead and 21 others injured, legally qualified as an act of terrorism. The FBI said that it did. Suspect Syed Farouk and his wife, Tafshin Malik, were killed by police in a shootout after that deadly attack, which they had apparently planned, according to the officials. Now, in addition to having plenty of ammunition for another attack, sources told various media that they also made sure to cover their tracks. Police detailed the extent of the arsenal of a dozen pipe bomb-style devices, more than 4,500 rounds of ammunition that were found at the couple's Redlands, California home. Additionally, 1,600 rounds that they had in the rental car they were driving during their face-off with police. Another tragedy that we've had a report on here. Well, Jacksonville's Lake Ray joins us, state representative since 2008. I think as we move into some of the topics we'll cover this morning, just briefly, does this worry you? This kind of thing happening here in Northeast Florida, in our homes?
Kent, this is a great concern, not just to Northeast Florida. It's a concern across the country and certainly across our state. And one of the greatest concerns I have, of course, first and foremost, is for the safety and security of our citizens. But of great importance to us here in the state of Florida is our tourist industry. And when we have seen terrorist activities take place, as we've seen previously back in when the 9/11 event occurred, our tourism dropped off significantly. Certainly in Paris and in Europe, they're experiencing the drop-off because of the attacks a few weeks ago in Paris. And as we look at that and we go forward, it is an enormous concern for us. Again, not specifically just for the safety, while that is a major and our primary concern as the citizens of the state. But, you know, what are the chilling effects to our economy? If we had an attack occur at one of our theme parks, say at Disney or Universal or one of those, you could put a for sale sign in the state of Florida because no one is going to come and participate in the enjoyment that we have here in the state of Florida. And so it's most important that we be very proactive in making sure that the state is secure from potential terrorist attacks.
And late this week, one of the experts said there was a revelation that one of the California attackers had pledged allegiance to the Islamic State group on Facebook, and suggesting that that woman may not have had direct contact with ISIS, but at least was inspired by that ideology. As the FBI says, that's how they're investigating now. Is this terrorism, in your opinion?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think there's any question about it. I think that they knew it from the outset, but in their defense on that, certainly you want to make sure of what all was involved so that if it was a family that had just gone crazy, and we've seen some crazy people, people that have had mental issues, and certainly it's reasonable to check that out. But this is now an attack of terrorism, connected, obviously, or it seems to be connected with ISIS, and these are the threats that we're under here in our country and our state. And
well, one of the things that you mentioned you're going to be bringing out this coming week pertains to kind of a reaction, not specifically to what happened in Paris, but out of Paris came a lot of conversation about what does the world do with refugees coming out of the Middle East, specifically Syrian refugees at the time. That's not exactly what your bill is going to talk about, but tell me about this effort that you're making at the state level.
Well, and thanks for the chance to talk about this because it is so important. And, you know, so many people will probably try to take this and look at something that we're trying to do is the wrong way, as isolating people or not being compassionate with the flight of refugees, because certainly I think that we're all very compassionate with that.
They are going through a lot. I mean, the folks we're seeing in these videos right here are going through a lot as they've left their homes, fleeing for their lives in most of the cases, if not all of those cases, right?
Absolutely. And, you can't be a reasonably good person at all and not be compassionate for what they're going through. But compassion aside, there comes a threat with that. And the threat with that is that we don't know who a number of these people are. Now, the federal government has said that they have gone through a vetting process, and they said they're looking at, who these people are. The problem is that they will admit to you they do not have records on them, that many of the passports they have are non-valid passports. They're fraudulently made passports. And so we don't really have any record on a number of these people that are coming in. And particularly given the region that they're coming from, the infection, if you will, of ISIS that is there, they know, and according to some reports I saw earlier, that even some of those that were in Paris were a part of some refugees that had come in through Hungary and ultimately made their way into Paris for the attack. So the real issue is why would we want to bring them in without a good, proper vetting system?
And this is what your bill is about?
That's what this bill's about. And the governor, along with, I believe, 32 other governors around the country, said, we want to reach out, we do want to help, but we just can't put people and put the people of our states at risk. And so the president's response was that, well, you're going to get him, we're not going to give you any information, and you can't do anything about it.
Right, it's saying it's a federal issue, so...
Exactly.
States just have to play by our rules.
So we started looking around. I started saying, wait a minute, that's not true. And if you read the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, it basically says that the states have the right to protect themselves in the face of imminent danger. And so while that may not be a specific imminent danger, most agree that the nation is under an attack potential mode, as we just saw this week in California. And so why would you want to expand those opportunities without at least taking a look at that, and at least having information whereby we can go forward and help in either resolving an attack issue or preventing an attack issue, and yet the state of Florida has been being kept out of it. And that's just not right. And we have the right constitutionally to protect ourselves, independent of action of the president and independent of action by Congress.
So I know it's not out yet, but I appreciate you sharing some of the info there. The bill, you say, authorizes the governor, attorney general to act to protect the interests of the citizens of Florida as constitutionally provided. There's some other things. And we've got about a minute left. So does this sound like just a legal battle coming down the road? Because the state would have to prove that there was an imminent threat, or those sorts of things?
No. What we're going to do in this particular bill is there are agencies that are contracted with the state of Florida, and there are agencies that are contracted doing the same type of work with the federal government, and they are bringing those people in. So basically what this legislation will do is it will declare and require those agencies to tell us who they're bringing in, give us the background information, and then let our Florida Department of Law Enforcement take a look at that and find out if there's sufficient background information to say, yes, these are good people to bring them in. If not, then we would say, no, you can't bring them in. The agencies then will have the choice of whether or not they want to try to bring those people in. If they do, then they will be there will be a penalty to them, and we will restrict them from having any contracts with the state of Florida for the next 5 years.
Ultimately, could there still be some of the folks come in that refugees accepted to the state of Florida?
This instead of closing the door to everybody, this is the opportunity to make that check. And by the way, to those who have come through the legal process and have made their way in, this is a way for us to make sure that there isn't suspicion among people who have come through this other full vetted process. So it reduces suspicion of those that are here. It also gives us a check and an opportunity to make sure that citizens of the state of Florida and the economy is protected here.
Representative Lake Ray, appreciate it. Thanks for sharing with us first.
Thank you very much for having the chance to be here with you. And I'll be revealing more of that this week. I've got the legislation as we're in the draft form right now to be out this week.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, as the state representative mentioned, tourism is a big part of Florida. It's taking off in certain areas. What about in Northeast Florida? Paul Asselfer with us to join the conversation and to answer that question. That's next on This Week in Jacksonville.
After I woke up from my accident, I found I lost my 4 front teeth. The Highbridge implant team put my mouth back together again. They took the time to explain all the options. They could do 1 tooth or the entire mouth, whatever's needed. The technology behind Highbridge implants is amazing. But I think what most people notice is the artistry. That's what makes them special. I am so glad I chose Highbridge. It really is the simple way to a lasting smile.
Okay, guys, you need a big drive.
Big drive? You can score big savings at AutoNation's Sales Drive. Now go get them. Oh, and try yellow right halfback screen on 2.
The AutoNation Sales Drive is going on now, coast to coast. Get game-changing savings on every vehicle. Right now, buy new Nissan Altimas up to $6,000 off. Or new Rogues, only $17,990.
AutoNation, official sponsor of the AutoNation Cure Bowl.
Score big at AutoNation Nissan.
You know, you paid too much for those glasses.
Who?
You. You paid too much. Practically everyone overcharges, except for America's Best.
Who?
America's Best. They give everyone a deal. In fact, you can get 2 pairs of glasses and a free eye exam for just $69.95.
2?
2.
2.
2.
Who?
Stop it. 2 pairs and a free exam for $69.95. It's not just a better deal, it's America's Best.
Okay. So what else can we do in the community? What if Big Z visits first responders?
Oh, you gotta help us, you gotta help us.
Or we could just offer our celebration special meal.
Yeah, let's do that.
The Celebration Special Meal. 4 chicken fingers, Texas toast, crinkle fries, Zax sauce, and a 32-ounce drink. Zaxby's, proud to serve our communities for 25 years.
This is Pastor R.J. Washington of the Titus Harvest Dome. Join us on Channel 4 every Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m. We're going to have a God time. Yes.
The money I save with Real Sense, it helped me provide for my family.
That's what we're about doing, is moving people, moving families towards financial stability.
For free tax prep and financial education, visit UnitedWayNEFL.org/RealSense.
Tom Wills and Mary Bear on Channel 4, the local station. No matter where tragedy strikes,
mass shooting at a social service center,
people feel afraid, vulnerable. That's why News 4 Jax crime and safety analyst Gil Smith was live as the drama unfolded.
Just because you have multiple shooters doesn't necessarily mean this is a terrorist act.
Keeping you informed, calming fears with unique perspective throughout the night and into the morning. News 4 Jax, the local station. You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
Paul Asselfer joins us with more than 42 years of hospitality industry experience. It's on the website, so I'm not breaking news there.
Sorry.
But that level of learning and leadership makes him an expert in our book. So, Paul, the brief bio for you includes destination marketing experience as president and CEO of the Greater Columbus Convention and Visitors Bureau, Chicago Convention and Tourism Bureau, also vice president of sales and marketing for Disney Resorts, Hyatt Hotels Corporation. You've got a lot of tourism and hospitality in your background there. How do you feel about what's going on in Jacksonville right now?
Love it. I mean, the things that are happening right now, when I first got here, which is almost 3 years ago, I was pretty excited about what the opportunities here for Jacksonville really were. And now, watching what is happening, watching this community come together, watching this community actually dealing with the vision collaboratively for the future, and how in a unified voice we can be talking about Jacksonville to the world. That has never been done before. So if I look pretty pleased about what's going on, I am.
Tell me about some of those successes, I guess, in 2015 for Jacksonville and for the tourism industry. We know that we've reported on the state of Florida. The numbers keep going up on visitors coming. Yeah. What about here in Northeast Florida?
Well, I will tell you that overall, and a big measure of our overall tourism success is the hotel industry. And from 2014 to 2015, the numbers are up almost 12%. I'm talking about occupancy, I'm talking about average rate. but the numbers are up very good, and there's lots of people in our industry that are smiling right now.
Great. There are some things happening this winter. I saw something that you guys provided for us about winter on the water. Lots of different events surrounding mostly what happens on the St. John's, right?
Yeah, it is, and it really has to do with how we market Jacksonville overall, because as this glorious, what I'll call water wonderland, when we talk to the world about Jacksonville, particularly when you're talking about people who live up north, oh my goodness, it is such an easy sell. But our objective is to take our occupancy and average rates up significantly, because we still have been lagging behind a lot of other communities in Florida as far as that occupancy and average rate. And as the bed taxes are contributing to the upkeep of the athletic facilities, the stadium, et cetera, when you're looking at bed taxes contributing to the bond payments for the stadium, and when you're looking at bed taxes contributing to the selling, marketing, and promoting of Jacksonville overall, for us to start to get away from the 68% occupancy up to the 78% occupancy and average rates ranging about 80 up to 100 and 115, we could be doubling the amount of contribution that our industry is making to our community.
So maybe explain that for those of us who don't live and breathe that hospitality world. What does it mean when we say, hey, we want to get the occupancy rates up? Other than, you know, maybe the impression out there is, it just makes it harder for me to reserve a room or get a place to stay when I have family in town or whatever.
It really has to do with the big picture. You're talking about the future of our community. You're talking about building the prosperity of our community. You're talking about one of the major economic development engines of not only Florida, but Jacksonville, being the visitor industry. When we're talking about that, we need to, again, collaboratively be talking about how you create that in a planned way so that our community and for the future of our children is going to be much more prosperous and quality of life being much better. So it really deals with the big picture.
All right, your choice, and you're going to present it to someone who's watching right now. What is the thing not to miss to do over the holidays here in Jacksonville?
Well, when you're talking about the overall programs, and you'll laugh at me at this, but if none of you have been on the Ale Trail, I will tell you that that is one of the most incredibly growing attractions to the North Florida, Jacksonville area.
This is craft breweries,
craft
what have you?
breweries, and they're continuing to come in because the tourists, and we're getting tourists literally from Canada and all the states, they're coming in and they're getting our passports at our visitor centers, and then they go out and visit all of these breweries, and it is catching on. So Jacksonville, surprise to us, is turning out to be a great dining and brewery experience.
And I understand folks even get a free T-shirt at the end of the Ale Trail.
That's it. You know about this.
I've heard about it. How's that? Paul, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Continued success for what you're doing, marketing Jacksonville as a destination.
Much appreciated. Thanks.
Northeast Florida has so many people committed to giving back and to giving from their hearts. One of the organizations pushing forward to help families, and a success story that is for the Tom Coughlin J Fund. That's coming up. That's our next segment on This Week in Jacksonville.
Crystal and wing packs are perfect for any party or get-together, and you can eat them any way you want. Crystal, Crystal, wing, wing, Crystal, 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 wing, Crystal, 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 wing, Crystal, wing, wing, Crystal, Crystal, Crystal. Share crystals and wings this holiday season, only at Crystal.
Our website is a great place to go to learn more about us, the results we've had. We have 24/7 live chat, answers to frequently asked questions. It's a good resource to go to.
Harrell and Harrell. Don't settle for less than you deserve.
Snowman, look! This is the best part! The gift exchange.
Okay, honey, ready?
Ready.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, a $10 ticket. Oh, it's perfect.
Honey, aren't you going to open your gift?
Yeah, give me a minute here. I'm busy.
Okay.
She really likes her scratchers.
1, 2, 3. Thanks, Nutcracker.
Where's my ticket?
Sorry?
Give your gift a little something extra. With holiday scratch-offs from the Florida Lottery, you could win up to $2 million instantly. Florida Lottery, just imagine.
I'm not a friend. I was a cheerleader. I was on the homecoming court. If I smell it, you see teenagers smoking. Because I started smoking when I was a teenager.
Tobacco-Free Florida offers free nicotine replacement patches. Call 1-877-YOU-CAN-NOW.
Crime alerts, scams, rip-offs. News 4 Jax crime and safety analyst Gil Smith is here to help keep your family safe.
He's always looking out for you. Gil Smith has helped me protect my children.
A unique take on breaking news.
He's getting in, he's rolling up his sleeve, and he's already assessed the situation.
When crime hits close to home.
He puts me at ease. Gil Smith's got my back.
I would definitely say Gil has my back.
I'm News 4 Jax crime and safety analyst Gil Smith, and I've got your back.
At Channel 4, the smartest anchors challenge the smartest scientists on TV.
Hello there, Sheldon.
Pathway is hexagonal. It's always hexagonal.
Still trying to figure out that problem I gave you.
Structure, constant structure, one atom.
Wow, it's so simple.
He's got it. He's the smartest scientist on TV.
Hey, Adam, can you help us out on the news today?
Seriously?
Yeah, we're short a floor director.
I get to be in a movie.
No, Adam, it's the 10 o'clock news.
Smart anchors, smart comedy. Weeknights only on Channel 4.
Crystal's Mix 5 for $5 now features chili, and it's causing a great debate. Chili is soup. No, it's stew. Soup.
Stew. Soup. Stew.
Choose any 5 of your favorites in Crystal's Mix 5 for $5 now featuring chili. Only at Crystal.
Genetically modified salmon. The government says it's safe to eat, so why have some stores refused to sell it? Plus, superstar Leanne Rimes, the secret that took a toll.
I wanted to hide inside of myself.
All New Oz.
Monday at 4 on Channel 4.
We recently shared a story with you about a man who has overcome cancer. He wants to help those going through the battle that he knows all too well. Rudy Wells. His goal is now to become a pediatric oncologist because as a young boy, he developed leukemia. Wells is now a University of Florida graduate. He's on the verge of medical school. He told us that he hopes his story is going to help families have the comfort and courage to face the disease that he beat in the past.
Every day, I go study, I think about helping those people and helping those families. And it pushes me through a lot. Sometimes it gets extremely hard, and that's all I have to think about is that, and it pushes me.
Rudy tells us that a key part of his survival comes from the support he received from the Tom Coughlin J Fund. Executive Director Kelly Coughlin is here with us. What is that mission of the J Fund?
Our mission really is to be there for local families who have a child tackling cancer by providing financial, emotional, and real practical support. So our goal is to be there for parents and allow them to do whatever they need to do to be there for their children.
So tell me maybe specifically about Rudy. I got to meet him because you and I were at the same event and you introduced him. And by the way, I just heard from Rudy Friday that he's been accepted to the University of Florida's College of Medicine. And he wrote to me, I can now pursue my dream of becoming a pediatric oncologist. You may see me one day practicing at Nemours and Wolfson's. How proud do you feel or how gratified are you to hear that story?
We're just thrilled for Rudy. He is such an impressive young man, and he's really, his dreams are coming true, and it's wonderful. I mean, he's an inspiring story, certainly. We've known him for years and years. We got to know his family when he was very young. And then he was one of our actual college scholarship winners, so we helped support his studies at the University of Florida, and he's currently interning in our office, actually. So we were there when he got the news about being accepted to medical school, and he was thrilled.
I was just going to say, was he kind of excited
about that? Oh, my gosh, yes. He was, like, on the ceiling. So happy, yeah.
Obviously, it can be gratifying when you see success stories. What do you remember about the support you gave through those years, even in the treatment time for Rudy and his family?
It's really interesting because now that the Tom Coughlin J Fund has been around for about 20 years, we're starting to see some of these kids that we knew when they were 3, 4, 5 years old grow up. We're seeing stories like this where they're going to college, they're getting married. Unfortunately, all the stories aren't great. Yeah. There are very sad outcomes. There's certainly families that lose their child, but they're all inspirational to us, and they all give us a lot of drive to continue to do what we can do to lighten their burdens a little bit and help them get through, you know, what really is a crisis that most of us just can't even imagine.
So take me back. Many people know Tom Coughlin's name. What's the J part of J Fund? And back to your origins, I guess.
Well, Tom is my dad, and he was a coach at Boston College prior to coming to Jacksonville, and he had a young man who played football for him at Boston College named Jay McGillis. Jay was one of those kids that was not the strongest, fastest, most talented player on the team, but he did all the right things. He was a wonderful teammate and a great leader. And unfortunately, Jay was stricken with leukemia while he was a member of the team. And just in 8 short months, he unfortunately passed away. And during that time, my parents had the opportunity to see not only the physical toll that the disease played on Jay, but all of the financial and emotional, you know, trauma, really, that affected his whole family. And they knew that if there was ever a way that they could give back and support families who are going through a similar thing, that they want to do that in Jay's name. So when they came to Jacksonville, they established the Tom Coughlin J Fund.
Yeah, I've gotten to know you a little bit over the last couple of years because of some fundraisers that you... What are those, a couple of big ones, and maybe we'll help people save the date here for one of those.
We have 2 big fundraisers that we do annually here in Jacksonville. One is the Wine Tasting Gala, which will take place this year on March 18th at the Wells Fargo Center.
That's the save the date part right there, March 18th.
Absolutely. Put it on your calendar. It's a fabulous event. It was actually voted #1 charity gala in Jacksonville in 2015 by Jacksonville Magazine. And then we do a celebrity golf classic as well. That's in May. May 22nd and 23rd this year out at TPC Sawgrass.
All right. So is that open to everybody who wants to help
That is more of a sponsorship event.
Okay.
So it's groups or corporate groups, things like that. But the Wine Tasting Gala is open to the general public. It's just a ticket fee that is available on our website.
As I recall, that's a Friday night coming up.
It's a Friday night, yes.
So you can make plans to go enjoy with your significant other and
it's a fabulous
bid
date night.
on some auction items.
We have a
like
great one-of-a-kind silent auction. We have sports memorabilia, terrific experiences that are really one-of-a-kind, behind-the-scenes kind of things related to sports, and also fabulous trips and getaways and things like that. So it's a great night. We have over 25 restaurants in Jacksonville that come out and support, provide fabulous food and hundreds and hundreds of wines from all over the world.
And if you haven't yet, you get to meet this very wonderful, smiling executive director of the And Dad,
yes,
maybe.
My
maybe
dad.
Shake the coach's
certainly.
hand.
He and my mom will both be there and host the event, and along with a lot of other local celebrities that join us. So we're thrilled to have the support of many of the Jaguar players and you know, folks from all over the community that really come out and give back.
Kelly, I appreciate sharing the stories and the success and everything.
Thanks for the opportunity.
All right. This Week in Jacksonville airs each Sunday morning at this time. The State Senator Rob Bradley joining us next week. Here is you watch on air and online at news4jax.com.
At News4Jax, we're always covering the news, even when we're not on TV. Stay informed, on the go, and online at news4jax.com.